What's going on, everybody? We are back, and I am back with a lens review for you today, talking about the Canon 55 to 250 millimeter f4 to 5.6 telephoto lens. One of my favorite lenses, and one that I've had for about 12 or 13 years now. Let's do it! Big thank you to everyone tuning back into the channel. I just hit 100 subscribers on my YouTube channel a couple of days ago, so I'm really thankful for everyone who's watching the videos and liking the videos and commenting on the videos, engaging with me on social media. Y'all know who you are, and I really appreciate it. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about this lens today, so let's jump into it. The Canon 55 to 250 millimeter lens is on the cheaper end of their entire lens lineup, and it's made exclusively for cameras with Canon's APS-C size sensors. Bodies like the early Rebel series cameras, the T series cameras like the T4i, the T5i, T6i, and all the way up to the most recent T8i. This can also be used on the popular 7D series, like the 7D Mark I, the 7D Mark II, and it can be used on the 70D and the 77D and the 80D and the newer 90D as well. The construction of the lens is very basic. It's made of a strong, durable plastic. It has a plastic connector on the bottom of the lens where it'll connect to your camera instead of the metal ones that are found on the higher end lenses. But it's not really going to impact the image quality at all. The metal mounts just make for a bit of a more solid connection. It has a focal range of 55 to 250 millimeters. It has a variable aperture of 4 to 5.6, and it comes equipped with autofocus and image stabilization. And the stabilization is quite good for a lens that is at the $150 to $175 price point. I've been using this lens for a long time, and now I'd like to jump in and show you some of the photos that I've taken with it. You can see in a lot of these photos that I'm showing you, the lens is really sharp. These photos are not straight out of the camera. These have been processed in Lightroom with a little bit of sharpening and contrast adjustment and that sort of thing. But overall, this lens is a very sharp lens. If it's locked off on a tripod, it's extremely sharp. It just takes some overall really good images. Now, in order to get a really good blurred background with this lens, you're going to have to be backed up a decent distance from your subject, because you're going to be shooting, when you're zoomed in, you're going to be shooting at like that 5 to 5.6 aperture. So if you're like 20-25 feet back from your subject and you zoom in, you can still get a really nice blurred background. Some of the photos that you saw before, a matter of fact, I'll put up a couple of photos right here. Like these couple of portraits that you're looking at right now, those portraits, I took those while I was probably 20-25 feet back, maybe like, I don't know, maybe 15-20 feet back from the subject, and zoomed in on them instead of being right up close to them like you would be if you were shooting with like a 50 millimeter 1.4, because you're shooting at a 5.6 or a 5, so you have to be zoomed in at a deep telephoto range to be able to get that blurred background. You're not going to get that with this lens when you're at like 50 millimeters or 70 millimeters or something like that. But it can still make for a great portrait lens. One of my favorite parts of shooting with this lens is getting those close detail shots that are really hard to get with like a kit lens, like an 18 to 55 or something like that. With this lens here, I've been able to get really up close to subjects and get some nice detail shots, blur out the background behind the subject that you're taking a photo of. And this lens really makes a great companion to like an 18 to 55 millimeter kit lens. If you have the kit lens that came with one of the crop sensor cameras, now you're covered on a crop sensor camera, you're covered from like 18 to 250 millimeters. And when you zoom in 250 millimeters on a crop sensor camera, that's 250 millimeters times 1.6, which is the crop factor, which I don't know what the answer to that is. Hey Google, what's 250 times 1.6? 400 is the answer. At least that's what Google says. So basically, you're shooting with a crop sensor camera, you're shooting equivalent, you get this lens coupled with the 18 to 55 millimeter kit lens, you're covered from like 29 millimeters up to like 400 millimeters. So it's a great couple of lenses to have. Now, I want to tell you something. Now this lens here technically comes in 3 versions. You have this lens, which is the first version of the lens. The way that you can tell version 1 is you can see this like this gray line right here where the millimeter markings are. I don't know, you probably can't really see that, but those are the millimeter markings right here. This thick gray band right here, that's version 1 of the lens. Version 2 of this lens doesn't have this gray band. It has like a really thin band, and I think the millimeter markings are in black. If I can find one, I'll throw up a photo here of the version 2 of this lens. But version 2 is not STM. The third version of this lens is the STM version of it, which stands for stepper motor. Okay, so the lens that I'm actually shooting this video with right now has an STM lens on it. So if you're shooting autofocus, the autofocus is really fast and it's absolutely quiet. You cannot hear a thing from the autofocus when you're shooting with an STM lens. If you're shooting video with this lens, the one that I have in my hand, the version 1, if you're shooting video with it, it's gonna struggle, because when you're shooting video with the image stabilization has like this weird kind of clicking noise. And from all the research I've done and the videos I've watched, you don't get that from the image stabilization that's on the STM. Also, the autofocus is really, really bad with this lens with video. Unless you're in a really well-lit environment, the autofocus will just sit there and like, and it'll just sit there and kind of search for what you're looking for. But if you want to get some like simple kind of, locked off shots where you're locked off on a tripod and you just need to get some simple video shots, you can do it with this lens. Matter of fact, I have some, the lens that I'm shooting this video with now, I have another lens review coming up for that lens, and I shot the B-roll of that lens with this lens here. You know what, I'll try to insert some of the video of that. Here's a little bit of the B-roll of that lens that I shot with this lens. No, B-roll of that lens that I shot with this lens. Yeah. So overall, someone who's looking up reviews for this lens, like you're watching right now, is probably just getting started with photography or just getting started with video. There's a good chance you may have picked up a crop sensor Canon camera used, or maybe you picked up like the new T8i with the kit lens. This lens is gonna be a great lens. At the end of the day, I would pick up one of these lenses used. In my personal opinion, if you were gonna pick up this lens brand new, I would probably get the STM version of it, because you're gonna probably want those features eventually in the lens. So if you pick up the ones without the STM, you're probably looking somewhere around $170 to $190. If you pick up the one with the STM, it's probably gonna be around 300 bucks or so. But overall, it's gonna be a much better lens. The manual focus is gonna be a little bit better. The zoom ring, from what I've heard, is quite a bit better. You can do a bit more deeper research on them, but overall, the STM is probably the better choice. But if you can pick up this lens for, $70, $80 used off like, eBay or something, makes a great lens. So, like I said, I've shot thousands of photos with that lens, and I love the bokeh that it produces. The manual focus ring on mine is, there's like a little bit of grinding in it and stuff, so it technically probably needs some service, my lens, but still focuses really sharp. The autofocus in decent light when I'm shooting photos is still pretty fast with this lens, so overall, still works for me. I highly recommend it. But at some point, when I have the extra money to just kind of throw at it, at some point I would probably sell this one, and I myself would probably pick up the 55 to 250 STM. But like I said, this used one is a good lens too. Overall, the focal range and that sort of thing, it's a good lens to shoot with. So I don't have any affiliate links or anything like that in this video because I just wanted to talk about the lens and I'm not linking to that exact lens or anything. So, but go out there, kind of do some research on it. If I can answer any questions for you on the lens, be sure to let me know. If this video was helpful at all, if you liked it, be sure to like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you stick around and we can hang out and chat. And if you do, I'll see you on the next one.